Hi, everybody. I'm Scott, and thanks for joining us again today for another episode of the In Medicine and On Medicine podcast. As always, this is Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Susan is an Oriental medicine doctor and East Asian medical practitioner here in the Las Vegas, Nevada Valley. Her information comes across the screen every so often, so you may contact her to make appointments, ask questions, all that fun stuff. Do something other than just gamble when you're here in Vegas. You may also ask questions in the comments section below, and we'll do our best to get answers and whatnot back to you. Hey, happy anniversary to us. This is our 52nd episode. Wow, we've been doing this for a year. Can you believe it?
I know.
We haven't missed a beat. 52 of these in 2025. And wow. All right. So what I want to do today to celebrate that anniversary is kind of take a look back at some of the things we've done over the course of this year and like do a quick little review on, a handful of my favorite topics from the year. And just to wrap things up and put a nice bow on it and all that fun stuff. So one of my favorites was our first episode that we started with way back when, which was chronic pain. So tell us a little bit about traditional Chinese medicine and how you look at chronic pain and what people should know about the issue and coming to see you and what to expect.
Okay. So, well, without going...
And happy anniversary, by the
yes.
way.
Thank you. Happy anniversary to you, too. Without going too deep into the weeds of traditional Chinese medicine, because we'll probably get to that.
Yep.
Chinese medicine is completely different than Western medicine. And it's an energetic medicine, meaning that it deals with something called chee, which is doesn't have a physical form, but basically living things have chee and dead things don't. Okay. So the chee, well, everything in Chinese medicine has a physical and a non-physical component. So there's a physical part, and then there's the non-physical part, which is like the energetic part. Okay, like some people, if they can't get their minds around that, they might think structure and function. One is real, you can see it, and then one is a process, sort of. But it's a little more complicated than that. But anyway, so when the qi is flowing through our bodies, and it flows through our bodies in this really complicated way, everything's great, right? You don't have any pain, you can sleep, you can maintain the weight you want to be, everything's perfect. But when problems arise with the way that the qi is flowing in the body, when it becomes obstructed, or when there's not enough of it, or there's too much of it, or whatever, problems arise somewhere. Okay. So the basic diagnosis for pain in Chinese medicine is qi and blood stagnation. And the blood being the red stuff, but also having an energetic part as well. It's not moving. So when we see people with chronic pain, that's, pain that they've had for, more than 6 months. Right? Okay. Or it's probably more than 3 months. But anyway, they've had pain for a while, and some people have had pain for years and years and years. Which
always amazes me. That
it amazes me
too.
Have
the mettle to put up with that.
It's shocking, really, and people just think it's like a natural part of aging that they should have pain or whatever. But anyway, it just means that something is stuck, and it can be stuck for years. And so what we do, what acupuncture is really good at, and what Chinese herbology is also really good at, is getting things moving. Okay. For example, I have a patient right now who was in a car accident 9 months ago. Okay. So she just came, and she was doing a lot. She was going to a chiropractor. She was doing different things, and she was having just terrible pain for months and months. And luckily, she works at an acupuncture clinic. Yeah. And the acupuncturist that she works for used to be a student of mine. Okay. And she said to me, I think acupuncture might be the missing link here. And so the woman came to me, and sure enough, things were not moving. Okay. So, and it was bad. I mean, she had really severe pain and migraines that wouldn't go away.
So then in that case, it doesn't really matter what other treatments or Western treatments or pharmaceuticals or whatnot you're on, if it's not, from your standpoint at least, if it's not getting that energy that qi to move and balance out.
Well, here's the deal. What we believe is that the physical follows the non-physical, right? So that we direct the energy, and then the physical body follows it because the physical body wants to follow it. Okay, it's a lot like martial arts that way. Like martial artists kind of throw their chi, and then follow their chi, or like downhill skiers kind of throw their chi down the mountain and then follow it.
So is it wrong to kind of say that the chi wants to be in balance?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Harmonious balance is the natural state of things, right?
Right.
So like with this woman, okay, you're going to the chiropractor, which I have nothing but respect for chiropractors, but it takes a long time because what they're doing is sort of the opposite of what we're doing. They're adjusting people. They're putting things back where they're supposed to be, but then they just go out again. So then they have to keep doing it over and over and over and over until finally it stays. Where in Chinese medicine, it's like fix the energy and the bones will go back where they belong by themselves. So sure enough, I mean, when she first came in, I thought, oh man, this is going to take a while. She has so many symptoms and so many things are going wrong. And I was thinking, wow, this is going to be like twice a week for a few months. And she had such a dramatic response to the first acupuncture treatment. I mean, basically her pain went from a 9 to a 1.
Okay, but just so we're setting realistic expectations. That's not the norm. The norm is, if you've had it for 2 years, it might take 10% of that.
That is true. That is true. So I was thinking, okay, she's had it for 9 months. It's probably going to take 3 months to fix it. And now I feel like, it's not going to take 3 months. But again, the longer people have had something, the longer it might take to fix, right? And so, but it's really, and the other thing is people tend to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, right?
The definition of insanity.
Exactly. So, but I understand it though. I understand that you get into a path and you kind of have tunnel vision. I understand that. But so often I'll say, well, what are you doing for your leg pain or whatever? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, well, is it working? And so often people just kind of look at me like I just spoke,
magic.
I just said something in another language, I'm like, well, is it working? And
you don't even think about that.
They don't even
you're so
think
caught
about
up
it.
in the routine.
Yeah, they don't even think about it. And then they kind of go, well, wait a minute.
Right.
I guess not. Yeah, it's like, so try something else.
All right, but the bottom line is, because I want to be disciplined here, otherwise we won't get through all our topics. The bottom line is to come see you before it gets to that point. Like see
Absolutely.
you at the top of the process as opposed to when all else has failed.
Right.
And I think that's going to be the theme of a lot of these
That's going to be the theme
today.
of everything because in this country, people come to us last. They come to us when they're really complicated and when they're a really thorny problem, right? Where it's not easy at all and it's been going on forever and they're desperate and that's when they come to us. And I mean, I've been doing this 25 years and I got to tell you, for all of those 25 years, I've wished that people came to me first instead of last, but that's just not the way it is here.
All right, let's move on.
Wait a minute. I wanted to say one more thing about chronic pain really quick.
Please.
We touched on how people get into this like mindset that they can't, they have like tunnel vision about their own treatment, even if it's not working. Also, sometimes that can really be a pathology. Thinking of a patient that I had who came in and whose pain was I asked her, what's your pain level? And she said, it's a 10 out of 10. Now, personally, my pain scale, a 10 is having your leg amputated with no anesthesia, but everyone's pain scale is unique to them. And I was like, okay, a 10 out of 10 is pretty terrible.
Well, a 10 out of 10 that you could sit here in front of me.
That you could walk in the office.
Right,
it's hard for me to grasp. Right. At the end of the treatment, I said, well, what's your pain level now? And she said, it's a 0. And I'm like, okay.
And that's not right.
0?
Isn't that a little extreme also?
Yeah. And I said, okay, it's a 0? And she said, yeah. And she made some joke like, oh, can I just lay here the rest of the day? And I was like, well, it'll get a little crowded, but sure. And then she got off the table and she looked at me and she said, I still have pain. I just can't feel it right now.
Right. That makes no sense.
And I thought, what?
So,
and she left and never came back. I mean, that was it.
So before I go on, is that a recurring theme also that this want to be in denial about crediting the medicine as having worked?
It does happen. I would not say it's the norm.
Okay.
It's pretty shocking. But I have had people say, I'm not coming to you anymore because the acupuncture not working. And I say, well, what about your elbow pain? And they go, what do you mean? What elbow pain? And it's like, that's why you came to see me for elbow pain. And they say, oh, that wasn't the acupuncture. That was just a coincidence.
Right.
I mean, so once in a while that happens. Now, this patient that said, I just can't feel it right now. I actually know someone who knows her. And what is she doing? She's going down this extremely expensive path with this extremely expensive machine or whatever. And is it working? No. So to me, it's just like, okay, there was a person who had some other issue aside from the pain that is above my pay grade. I can't figure it out.
It's sometimes it's mind-boggling. So
Yeah.
okay, let's move on. So that was a great way that we started this whole series off, digging into chronic pain. Because I said to Susan, what's like the thing you hear the most about, and that was it.
Pain.
Now, one of the things you don't hear a lot about, but that you do have to intervene in, was what we talked about in our third episode, which was nutrition. So give me a little spiel about recognizing patients that need that kind of intervention versus the ones that may come to you openly saying, I need to make a change. And how do you look at nutrition? Do you treat it almost like an addiction? Like what's the whole roundup there?
Okay, so Chinese nutrition is completely different than Western nutrition. Okay, like Western nutrition looks at the components of our food, right? Carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates are sugars, proteins, fats, right? And then micronutrients and things like that, amino acids and all that. And then they figure out like what our bodies need of all those different things, and then they sort of arrange it so that they design something so that we get, all those little components. Okay, well, Chinese medicine doesn't really do that because it's been around since before there were, microscopes and stuff like that. So Chinese, there's a saying in Chinese that says, if you have an illness or if you're sick, first try to fix it with food. And if you can't fix it with food, try Chinese herbs. And if you can't try Chinese, and if that doesn't work, then go to acupuncture, go to the energetics, right? In this country, we kind of do it the opposite. But the key is that herbs in Chinese medicine are just more concentrated food. They're not drugs, right? So food is actually a really important therapeutic device.
And you're not you don't mean just any food. You mean there's specific, when you have this, start with this.
Yes.
And then,
Yes. And so the just like Chinese herbs, foods have some qualities such as temperature, not temperature that you serve them at, but some foods are called hot foods.
Peppers.
Yeah, like a hot pepper. Some foods are considered cold foods, like dairy products or cheese. Okay. Some foods are in the middle. Some foods are more yin, like chicken is more yin than beef is more yang. Everything's kind of on a continuum. Vegetables are more yin. Fruits are more yin. Oils and seeds and stuff like that are more yang. So anyway, but we do look at it kind of the same way that, okay, this person has this issue and their underlying constitution is they have something we call yin deficiency. Okay. So then I take out a little cheat sheet and say, here are a bunch of foods that are really good for your yin that would be good for you to incorporate into your diet, right? And then if that isn't enough, then I might say, I want to make you a formula to tonify your yin and use yin tonifying herbs, which are just stronger than food. So like in China, I would write out a prescription for somebody and they would with herbs, and they would just go to the grocery store because that's where there's a lot of herbs and herb formulas just in the grocery store. So because they're considered food,
right,
not medicine. So so Chinese nutrition is really pretty interesting as far as that goes. But then also personally, just me personally, I have some other issues about nutrition that I think are really important. And one is a guy called Matsunobu Fukuoka, which we talked about, who was a Japanese person who wrote a book called The One Straw Revolution, which I think is really valid. And what Fukuoka said was that there are 4 diets. There's the diet of purpose, which is I want to gain 10 pounds, I want to lose 10 pounds. There is the diet of conscience, which is I'm not eating animals because I don't think it's right or whatever, or I'm a vegan. There's the diet of indulgence, which is like I'm going to eat whatever I want whenever I want it, which is the standard American diet, or SAD.
Right.
Okay. So we got diet of purpose,
Sad.
diet of conscience.
Religion, wasn't there?
Oh,
one
and
re-
then we have, no. And then we have the natural diet.
Okay.
So the natural diet is what is right for you.
And what does that mean? We spoke about that a lot. In
Yeah,
that
we did.
episode.
And so what my professor said was, and what Fukioka said too was, well, how can you figure, okay, the diet of purpose, you're not eating for nutrition, you're eating for some other purpose. For diet of conscience, you're eating for some other purpose, right? You're not eating for your optimal health, right? SAD, standard American diet, you're just being indulgent and eating a bunch of garbage, okay? But your natural diet takes a little bit of investigating, because 150 years, 200 years ago, we were born, we lived our whole lives, we died, and all of our food was raised in like a 50-mile radius. And that's how it has been for millennia, okay, before about 150, 200 years ago, right? So,
Right, unless you were like in a military or a conqueror or something.
right.
You grew up and died in your village.
Exactly. And your food was all raised there. So what my professor said was, okay, go back and figure out where your people come from
Okay.
and what their natural diet is. And this was before the internet. Like now it's so easy to do.
Right.
Oh my goodness, it's ridiculous. And what you do is you go back to, well, where are my people from? And you figure out where your people are from. And then honestly, you just go, what is the natural diet for, what is the traditional diet for this area? And boom, you get it right away. And invariably, people look at that food and go, oh, those are like my favorite things, And even here, when people have really mixed genetic heritage, they are usually drawn to one or another
Okay.
of their ancestors. And so, I had a patient who was having difficulty maintaining the weight she wanted to be. She was carrying around some extra pounds, and all of her people on her mother's side and her father's side, all the way back, are all Irish. And I said, well, why don't you go get an Irish cookbook and start eating Irish food?
Really? Because that's hardly.
She did. She
low-cal
lost 10
food.
pounds. And I did not expect that.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I did not expect that. But yeah, she just started eating stuff that people eat in Ireland, and, she lost some weight.
Wow, interesting. And probably not just for your weight, but also for your general health, because again, you ate what you had available to you.
Right. So my diet, my natural diet, and your natural diet are completely different.
Right.
And so it helps to really get an idea of like, well, what's good for me? What should I be eating? And so, that, because everything in Chinese medicine, there's the issue, there's the branch, why people come to see us, right? That we have to get rid of. But then there's the root, the underlying constitution. Well, if we don't get rid of the root, even if we get rid of the branch, it might just grow back, right? So we have to address the root, and a lot of that is nutrition.
Wow. Okay, so before we move on from nutrition, what about another person we spoke about who happened to help me when I had my problems through you, was Paul Pitchford. So tell us a little bit about him and what his studies revealed, and et cetera,
Right.
et cetera.
Paul Pitchford's book is absolutely great. So when I was in school, so this is, a long time ago, 2000 maybe?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe earlier. Okay, around 2000. Anyway, this guy had written this book. Okay, so Paul Pitchford wrote this book about nutrition. And he came to my school to teach a class. And I thought, well, I'm not taking that guy's class. He looks like the most unhealthy person I've ever seen in my life. I'm not learning any nutritional stuff from him. Okay, I thought he was 40 and he was 70. So he looked
Maybe
great.
you better listen.
Yeah. So Paul Pitchford, he's passed away now, but his book has been updated, I think, once since then. So he does a really great thing. He takes Western nutrition and Chinese nutrition and puts them side by side. It's not a book you read cover to cover.
Right.
But he really does a great job. You can't really follow everything he says religiously because he's really hardcore, But that book is really helpful. And he's got all these tables and all these lists of foods, and he's got like cleanses, and he's really big on kanjis, which is like rice soup. And he's extremely thorough.
And you have to be really disciplined with it. Like I'm in the midpoint of this past year had a gallbladder problem that you helped me with, and when we referenced the book, it was like I need to eat 2 radishes a day every day for 5 months or something or other it was, and if it didn't get better, then to start slamming Granny Smith apples one after another. I mean, but it was not only hardcore, but the discipline, and between that and the acupuncture treatments that you gave me, it all worked. Yes,
right. There were a couple. There's kind of a go-to treatment for gallbladder problems, but right. And so, but you took it seriously. Like had you gone to the ER when you had the initial attack, they would have taken your gallbladder out in a second, because that's just what they do. You don't need it. But because you've made these dietary changes, you've added things like the radishes and the blueberries and all that, but you've also taken some stuff out, and like the chocolate. And, all kinds of
fatty
stuff.
foods, all the fried foods,
and all that stuff. And so, you still have your gallbladder, and it still functions.
Goodness, yeah. One surgery avoided. All right, moving on. Yep. In episode number 9, we hit on one of the pillars of what you do, which is Chinese herbs. So give us a little dissertation on Chinese herbs, what they are, how you use them, when you decide to use them in treatment, and how it's part of all these different pillars that you have with acupuncture and moxa and cupping and all these different treatments.
Right. So Chinese herbology is really old. Now, it's not the oldest. There's a theory that Ayurvedic herbal medicine from India actually came up and over the mountains and into China at first. Traditionally, though, there is this ancient guy named Shen Nong who is said to have brought herbology to the Chinese people. He was said to have tasted the 100 herbs, 100, 1,000, 10,000, it's all the same word in Chinese, on himself to decide, what all these things were. He's semi-mythological. He was also blue and he had horns. So who knows? But anyway, so Chinese herbology is very, very complex and detailed. And the herbs are divided into categories like tonify the yin, tonify the yang, move the blood, drain dampness, things like that. Relieve food stagnation. That was when we talked about around Thanksgiving.
Yep,
okay. Food stagnation, you can probably figure out what that is. Anyway, so we rarely, if ever, very rarely prescribe one herb at a time. The herbs interact with each other, and it's that interaction that we strive for when we make somebody a formula. So when do we want people to take formulas? Oh, gosh. I mean, if there's any sticky underlying constitutional issue that, we can probably fix with acupuncture, but it might take a long time. So that's one of the things I like about herbs, is that it makes things go faster.
Okay.
Right. And you don't take them forever. You just take them till you don't need them anymore. And because they're like food, they're not like drugs. So you can't like overdose on them. They're not dangerous. Like if you mess up the dose, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So there's several different ways that the herbs are dispensed. The best way is the raw herbs, which are really quite beautiful, but you have to cook them in a special way and make like a soup or a tea out of them. It tastes awful. It smells awful, but it's really good and it works really well. And even if it tastes awful, if you taste it, if it's the right formula for you, people will say, wow, this tastes bad, but I like it.
It's kind of a good awful.
It's kind of a good awful.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird.
Right.
But they have to cook for hours. I mean, it's a real pain, right? Sometimes you can't add them all at once. You got to hold one back and then you got to add it later. And nobody wants to. I mean, very few people want to do that. Some people that are like of Asian descent who grew up doing that, they're totally cool with it,
What about in China? It's second nature for them to do this?
In China, it's like perfectly normal. Yeah, like a lot of the formulas, that I might dispense, people in China can just go to the grocery store and buy. So that's the best way. So the next best way is what we call granules. Right? So the herbs have been processed into granules that dissolve in warm water. So it's not quite as good as the raw herbs, but it's pretty good, and it's customizable, right? So I can make you a custom formula by adding different granules together, just like I would the raw herbs. So that's good. That's a lot easier. A lot of people can take a little spoonful and put it in a little warm water and take it like a shot. There's also tinctures, and tinctures are good, but tinctures are pre-existing formulas. So like I can't really modify a tincture, but that's okay. I mean, there's a zillion formulas. To get licensed in the United States, I believe it's still, you need to be, when you take your herbology test, you need to be familiar with 160 formulas.
Okay.
And I think it's 450 herbs. I don't quote me on that, but it's
But
around
that's
that.
not
It's a
all
lot.
of that.
That's not even
the
that,
tip of the
yeah,
iceberg.
that's not all of them. I mean, and there's some of the more esoteric ones we can't get in this
Right, but
country.
there's a myriad of combinations
Oh,
and
yeah.
compounds and whatnot that you're able
Oh,
to,
yeah.
to mix and match. Right?
Oh, yeah. And then there are things called patents, and
Okay.
patents are pills. So the pills are the weakest, but they have the highest compliance because Americans are accustomed to taking pills.
Yep.
So you got to kind of weigh that, like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what if they're not, like, some people will just say, I'm not drinking that stuff. Give me a pill, and it's like, okay, I'll give you a pill. Better to take a pill than to take nothing.
Okay, and then tell us, we talked about a couple of herbs, formulas for people to keep on hand at home for various things. So
Oh,
tell
yeah.
us about Gama Ling and...
So Ganmao Ling is a modern formula, and Ganmao Ling is great because you don't have to have a specific Chinese diagnosis to take it. So regular patients who don't know about yin and yang and heat and cold and blah, they don't know any of that. Ganmao Ling is when you wake up in the morning and you feel like you're coming down with something and you don't know what it is. It could be a cold, it could be the flu, it could be an ear infection, it could be a million things, but you do not feel right. Ganmao Ling is the formula for you. You can follow the dose on the bottle. Usually it's something like 3 or 4 pills 3 times a day. Basically, what I tell people is take it. The symptoms should recede. If they start coming back, take it again. The symptoms should recede. Take it again. If you take too much, it gives you loose stools. So if you take too much, you'll know.
Okay, but that... Right.
There's a little bit more. There's a little bit more.
But that's the difference between herbs and pharmacologies, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the one, so what Ganmao Ling is for is it either kicks out whatever it is you're coming down with, or it shortens up the time you're sick. So if you take it for a couple of days and you go, I don't think this is working, I think I'm getting sick, then stop taking the Ganmao Ling because it probably has shortened up the course of whatever you're getting, but it hasn't completely kicked it out. So you're going to have to, move on. So Ganmao Ling is a great one to have. There's another one called, and you can spell this, and I beg everyone's pardon who speaks Chinese because my Chinese is terrible, but Huaxiang Zhangqitang, which is another one that is really good if you feel like you're sick. It's good for like...
That's for after you're sick. Though,
after
right?
you're sick, yeah.
The Ganmao Ling is for...
Is when
how
you
do
feel like
pronounce
you're...
that properly?
Ganmao Ling.
Ganmao Ling, okay. Is for when you feel like you're coming
down with something.
But when you've missed that...
right, you already have a fever, you have nausea, you have body aches.
You're sick.
You're getting sick.
Right.
Huaxiang Zhangqitang is great. It's also great for, like, I advise people to take it when they travel because people have a lot of... they don't feel well, or they have like indigestion problems, and they just don't feel right, and it's a good formula to take then. And again, you don't really have to know very much. What else? Oh, another one that's really good to have on hand, excuse me, especially if you tend to get injured a lot, is something called Yunnan Baiyao.
Okay.
And Yunnan Baiyao comes in a pack of pills, and then there's a little bitty red pill.
Okay.
And it's for pain. It's for musculoskeletal pain, injury, that kind of thing. So it's like, I was in a car accident.
The Matrix. Do you want
my
the
neck, the red pill or the blue pill? I was in a car accident. I'm going to go to my doctor tomorrow. My neck is killing me. I've got Yunnan Baiyao at home. I'm going to take the red pill.
Okay.
You take the red pill, and then you take the rest of the pills. And that's just for injuries, musculoskeletal pain, stuff like that. So those are three that are just like kind of
Interesting,
good.
fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, let's move along. So then in episodes 11 and 12, we did a super deep dive. We spent almost 2 hours talking about women's health. So obviously, in 5 minutes here, give us a little overview of how you look at women's health, some of the things you treat the most. Give us your little dissertation on menopause, which we went into, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so there are many practitioners who specialize in women's health because it's so vast and so complex, because we have, menstruation, and then we have obstetrics and gynecology. So there's a lot there. And so in Chinese medicine, there's a like a, what's it called? Like a cycle of life, a cycle that women and men have their own cycle, but women go through. They start out as children, and then they become adolescents, and then they begin to menstruate, and then they,
Reproduce,
get pregnant, and then they have children, and then they age, and then they stop menstruating, etc.
Okay.
And so there are, so that's how it should work. It should work just fine. Like, people should not suffer. Okay. They shouldn't have like horrible problems with their periods, right?
Okay.
They should just have a period every 28 days.
Okay.
Like, it's just normal. Like, they shouldn't have, horrible PMS or cramping, or, or their period shouldn't be all over the place and be, like all irregular. They shouldn't have like blood clots. They shouldn't have any of this.
Or heavy flow 1 month and light the next. It should just be normal.
It should just be, because it is normal, right?
Right.
And so we see a lot of people who need their menstruation regulated, and that all depends on their differential diagnosis. Because, like, if you have 10 patients show up and they all have irregular periods, they may all have a different Chinese diagnosis and a different type of approach with acupuncture and Chinese herbs in order to fix it. There's also a huge, many people specialize in fertility. And basically, I've been really successful with fertility, and it is not my specialty at all. So,
really, using Chinese medicine and acupuncture and whatnot.
What my experience has been, and again, there are people who dedicate their lives to this, and I am not one of them, but usually, basically what we do is we look at ovulation, and we identify what part of ovulation isn't working, and then we use Chinese herbs and acupuncture to regulate that process.
Okay.
Allowing people to actually become pregnant, okay? And then during the pregnancy, we do the same thing. We monitor the pregnancy, and then depending on, what's going on, again, a pregnancy should be pretty uneventful, right? It should be a natural process. And then as women age, in Western culture, there's this thing called menopause, which is like, your life is basically over. And that is just absolutely not the way it's thought of in Chinese medicine. Women should just stop menstruating, and that should be it.
Right.
They shouldn't have all this crazy stuff that women have here. When I was in school, my Chinese professors called menopause the American disease, because women all over the world just stop menstruating. It's no big deal. I once had a teacher, she's kind of a rock star in Chinese medicine. Her name's Sharon Wiesenbaum. She's in Massachusetts, I believe. And she is a rock star in women's health. She's really something. People actually go and like work in her clinic under her, like just to be around her. She's so good. She also does a lot of translating. And I wish I had this. She read like a classic text that was translated by a man about the cycle of women's health. Okay, starting out at the year when they're 7 years old, and then and when it gets to the end, it basically says, and at the age of, I forget what, 49, her womb shrivels up and she has nothing more to offer. It was really bad. But Sharon translated the same text, but did it from a woman's perspective.
Oh.
Looking at the same Chinese words, but choosing a different interpretation. And hers was like, And at the age of 49, the woman, her village benefits from her wisdom. You know, I mean, it was like a completely
It's
different
blossoming instead of shriveling
exactly.
up. Right.
It was just like the most amazing thing. I remember I was in a class with her and we all just started laughing because it was like, of course, you know, because really, you know, women should just stop menstruating. But then you have this whole lifetime of experience. You're no longer, you know, raising children, but you're helping younger people raise children. And yeah, your village can benefit from the wisdom that you have garnered over the course of your life. So, you know, now is your time to be Georgia O'Keeffe, you know, who painted her best paintings after she was 60 years old.
But are we saying that women don't get menopause, just stop it? Or are we saying if you're having particular symptoms that might indicate that to come and see you?
Absolutely. I mean, something's not in balance. Something is not right because you shouldn't have any problems. You should just stop menstruating.
So what you're having then is an imbalance.
Yes, there is some imbalance, and that is what is driving you crazy and making your life miserable. And what I am here to say is don't put up with that.
Right.
I mean, I'm clearly over that age, and I didn't go through that. You know, I mean, I got treatment.
Right.
You know, and yeah, I didn't suffer at all.
All righty.
And that's what it's supposed to be like.
Right. All right. Again, I encourage everybody to go back and see what that was. Episodes 11 and 12, we did a deep dive in women's health. In episode 21, we talked about what became our theme for this past year, which is wind is bad.
Oh, wind is bad.
Tell us about wind, why wind is bad in Chinese medicine, and what to do about it.
Wind is so bad. Wind is so bad. Okay, so in Chinese medicine, there are these things called EPIs, external pernicious influences. You can think of them as germs, but they have kind of a poetic name in Chinese. They're disease-causing entities.
Okay.
Heat, cold, damp, dry, summer heat, which is basically heat and damp mixed together, and then wind.
Okay.
And the wind is what the other pathogens ride on to enter the body.
Okay.
And this area back here on the back of your neck is called the wind gate, and that is where the wind can get in. So this part of your body, you don't ever want wind blowing on you.
Okay, so let me ask the simple, stupid question, which is, what do we mean by wind? What constitutes wind? Is it anything?
No. Windy problems tend to come on rapidly, like wind. They also move around. So like a windy type pain is a pain that moves around. Like people will say, oh my God, you know, first it's my ear and now it's my throat and now it's my shoulder and now it's my knee and now it's my, it's like, okay, that's a windy pain. It's moving around. Okay.
But what about, I think what I was asking was, what about the type of wind that's coming in? Does it matter if it's, you know, the breeze outside versus my air conditioner or a fan?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. So, so there's like wind cold, wind heat, wind damp, wind dryness. So here in the Mojave Desert, which is the land of wind, okay, it blows here constantly from every different direction. We tend to see people, we tend to see people that have had wind heat. So it's wind bringing the heat into the body, so people are hot. Okay, they, even if they have like chills, the feeling of fever is worse. They might have like a really feeling hot with maybe a little tiny bit of chills, and they'll have other heat symptoms like sore throat, that kind of thing, sneezing, stuff like that. But we also see people here that have wind cold because the air conditioners are all turned on in the summer. And honestly, sometimes you can walk into a grocery store here and it feels like it's 50 degrees. So here it's 115 out and everybody has a hoodie because if you have to walk inside, it can be freezing.
Yep.
And so often in like grocery stores, especially
right when you walk in the
right
door,
when you walk in, they blast you with this air conditioner. And every time I go, oh God, that is so bad. Like, don't get a wind cold from this, you know? So then we have acupuncture techniques and Chinese herbs that expel the wind and expel the pathogen. So so wind is never good. And honestly, I've talked to so many people over the years who know nothing about Chinese medicine who go, I hate wind.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, wind is not good.
Or sometimes you'll see, like in the dead of winter, you'll see somebody out there, like in a snowstorm or something, and their neck is wrapped guarding that wind gate, right? But they're
Yeah.
not wearing a hat. And you're like, how the heck can they be out there like that? But that's why, because they are protected in that
Right,
regard.
right. And people just know. They just have a sense that, oh, I need to cover this area right here.
Okay,
Otherwise-
so going back to the herbal stuff we were talking about, you get a wind invasion, and that's what may generate you not feeling right when you wake up in the morning, right? And then
Right.
you go to the Ganma Ling. So.
Right. So, and there's formulas for wind cold or wind heat,
Okay.
but Ganma Ling is for both. You don't have to know what you're coming down with. It doesn't matter. That's why I like it so much.
Okay, you told us a great story in that episode about a patient with fans all over the bedroom and house.
Oh my God, that was so funny. She was such a nice person too. So one of my patients had this friend and she said, oh my God, this poor woman is suffering so much from restless leg syndrome, which is windy, right? Because it's something that's moving, right? So she finally came in. My patient finally convinced her to come in. And I'm listening to her whole story, and she has such terrible restless legs. She can't sleep with her husband anymore, and she has to like lay on the couch and like hold herself to keep from like falling. I mean, it sounded crazy, just absolutely crazy. So then I said, okay, well, she told me the whole story, and I said, okay, so your Chinese diagnosis is something we call wind, and she got this look on her face, and I was like, what is it? What is it? And she said, well, something like, well, is wind bad? And I told her what it was. Well, then she told me that she had eight fans in her bedroom blowing on her while she
From
was
every
sleeping
direction.
from every direction. And I was like, you got to get rid of those fans. Every single one of them. So she did. She got rid of all the fans. She still had a ceiling fan. I said, okay, the ceiling fan's probably fine. Excuse me. But yeah, and she had an underlying constitution that made her a little vulnerable to wind, because some people's underlying constitution does make you a little bit vulnerable. So I explained all that to her. I showed her. I gave her a list of foods to eat. We did a few acupuncture treatments. I don't know, maybe 2, 3.
Okay, but let me ask you a question. So conversely, some people are vulnerable, but conversely, are some people more tolerant of wind?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so this woman, she it just like totally fixed her restless leg syndrome, and
Take away the wind.
Take away the wind.
Wow, that's remarkable.
But yeah, the 8 fans, that was a new one on me. That was I was
funny.
like, oh my God. That's
Okay,
so
and
bad.
now we'll move along. We'll do a couple more, and then we'll wrap up and start to plan for year 2.
Oh my.
In episode 29, we talked about, because you're always bringing up the myths that people have about Chinese medicine. So tell us a few of the myths that you are constantly debunking and what they are. And
It's so funny, because it's like so often I have to say, look, it's not magic, okay? And so that's why I like to do a lot of explaining. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm just making this up, or that I'm, channeling some divine entity or whatever. No, I mean, this is all based on empirical knowledge. It's all based on observation, thousands of years of observation. So I'm not making it up. So I tell the people, okay, this is what your Chinese diagnosis is. This is how I arrived at it. This is the treatment. This is what I'm doing. Okay, there. But I guess probably the main myth that people believe is that somehow you have to believe in it, like it's a religion or like God or
Right.
something. Like you have to believe in it. And I'm like, what are you, crazy? You don't have to believe in it. It is what it is, whether you believe in it or not. It's like, oh, I don't believe in penicillin, I mean,
but if the
it still
results
works,
are the results are the results,
right? It still works. So I think that's probably the main myth. Another myth is
to give people, not to totally bash all your patients and whatnot, you are telling us stories about people with blue skin and horns. So there's, it's not too far-fetched for us to think that there's a mystical, magical component to this that, may make you want to question the whole thing.
I remember back when I was in school, and there was one, she wasn't a professor, but she was like married to one of the professors, Dr. Duan. And the only reason Dr. Dewan wasn't a teacher was her English was not really good enough to teach, but she spoke 5 languages. So,
Right.
I mean, she was brilliant, really, and she was really young. And one of my fellow students who spoke fluent Chinese, she had a photographic memory. She was super smart. Oh my God. And she was talking to Dr. Dewan because she could speak Chinese. And she said to Dr. Dewan, "Oh, I wish, we don't have anything like the people that they're called the immortals. Okay. The immortals are like the doctors from centuries or even thousands of years ago that wrote the classics of Chinese medicine that we still use today." And she said to Dr. Dewan something like, "Oh, we don't have, our country is so young. We don't have any immortals like you do in China." And Dr. Dewan said, "Oh, that's not true. Yes, you have immortals too." And she said, "Really?" And she said, "Yes, like the beautiful girl and the 7 short men."
Yeah.
And we were like, "What? Snow White and the 7 dwarfs?" So there is this kind of like in China, like a kid's book might be about Shenong,
Right.
and he's blue and he has horns and whatever. But he's a semi-mythical figure. There is some historic element to it, So anyway, but that oh my God, we laughed about that so hard. The
That's
beautiful
funny.
girl and the 7
What
short
other
men.
myths do you get a lot of other than it's magic?
That you need to be an Asian person in order to be a Chinese doctor.
Okay, I bet you get that one.
I get that a lot. Yeah, like, whoa, you're not Chinese. It's like, yeah, I know that. What people don't understand, I think, is that Chinese medicine is a huge medicine. It's gigantic. I mean, there's many ways of practicing it. There's the Japanese way. There's the Korean way. There's the Southeast Asian way. There's different types of Chinese medicine in China. There's the 5-element type and the principle type. I mean, it's huge, right? Plus, it's a huge export of China to the world.
Right.
So they practice Chinese medicine all over the world. So the way they practice Chinese medicine in France, for example, is different than we practice it here in the United States, is different than they practice it in China, is different than they practice it in
Russia,
South
right.
America, is different than they practice it in Russia, right? So because it's very culturally grounded, right? So, I mean, yeah, you can be an Asian person and practice Chinese medicine just fine in this country, or not. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, 95% of my professors were from China, but I still had a couple of professors who were extremely skilled and knowledgeable who were Americans by birth. And back in those days, they all had to go to China to do their internships because there weren't enough student clinics here. There weren't any. So, they had to go back to China to get their final training.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, you don't have to go to somebody who's an Asian. It's not magic. It hurts. Like, oh my God, one of my patients, he is so funny. He came in and he was so afraid of needles. And I am here to tell you, everyone is afraid of needles. I'm afraid of needles. You'd have to be crazy not to be afraid of needles. They're sharp and pointy and they can hurt you. So I said to him, look, when I was an intern a long time ago, I did a rotation at a methadone clinic and it was heroin addicts. Now, I wish I could just stick pins in people and take away their addictions. I can't. But as part of an overall treatment strategy, it's really useful. And so I did a whole lot of acupuncture on a whole lot of heroin addicts. And those are the only people I've ever met in my life who love needles. No, it's not that they're not afraid. It's part of their addiction. It's almost like I don't want to say, I mean, I'm not qualified to say, but it's almost like a sexual kind of a thing. It's or maybe not sexual, but maybe seductive, I think. There's a seduction to it. And that's part of their addiction. So, when somebody at the methadone clinic says, "Oh, you can use bigger needles if you want," and it's like, no, okay, that's part of your addiction. I'm going to use the correct needles for you, okay? So those are the only people that aren't afraid of needles. So when people say, "Oh, I'm afraid of needles," it's like, of course you're afraid of needles, but also, excuse me, they're thinking of a syringe. So a syringe is like a straw, right? Because you're sucking something out or you're putting something in. But my needles are the size of the hole in the straw.
Or smaller.
Or
Right,
smaller.
right.
I mean, they're tiny,
Right.
tiny things. And so, my one patient who was he was so afraid of needles. And now he's like, whatever. I mean,
And you've used ones on me that are attached to a Band-Aid and you have to use tweezers to put them in. They're so small.
Oh, yeah. And I've got a bunch of those. I got like 4 millimeter needles and 6 millimeter, like little tiny things. But yeah, I mean, they're, and they come in different widths and everything, so like needles that I use on somebody's scalp are a little thicker because I don't want them to bend.
Right.
But yeah, so, being afraid of needles is perfectly normal. If you're not afraid of needles, that's kind of unusual. And is it going to hurt? No. I mean, like if I put a needle in and it feels sharp and kind of pokey like a needle, that means I probably hit a little microscopic hair follicle and that I can't see. And that if I just move it a little bit, that stingy feeling will go away. But any other kind of feeling, like an achy feeling or a buzzy feeling or a ticklish feeling or pressure, that's all the chi being activated by the needle.
And
That's all good.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a log jam breaking up in the river. Like people might feel some kind of unusual sensations, and then it just mellows out, and then you go into what we call the therapeutic state, which is awesome, where you just feel really good.
Lovely. All right, moving on. An episode, what number was it? 33 and 34. We went and did a deep dive into how you diagnose all this stuff. So your two biggest tools are the tongue and the pulse. So give us a little bit about both and what's the difference in the two and how you use them and how that helps you arrive at what in this combination of tools you have in your kit you use on us.
Right. So there's these things called the 4 pillars, and that's the 4 pillars of diagnosis. So a big one is asking. Like we ask you a million questions. We call it the 10 questions, but it's more like the 10,000 questions. And then there's something called observation, okay? And a lot of that is the tongue. We look at people's tongue and we deduce what's going on inside their bodies from their tongue. And then the third one is palpation, which is touching,
Okay.
but a big part of palpation is pulse taking.
Okay.
And then the last one is listening and smelling, which is not one of the forefront ones, but is useful. Like, what do the people sound like? Do they have an odor about them? That kind of thing. But the pulse taking and the tongue are really useful. And one thing I just love about them is that I don't really have to listen to the person. So, like, I kind of have a lot of patients that English is not their first language. And so I don't really need to, understand Vietnamese. I can just look at their tongue and their pulse and use my Google Translate if I have to ask them something. But the thing about the tongue and the pulse is that they don't lie, right? They just tell you the truth. And so the tongue is the easier one to learn, because there are areas on the tongue that correspond to certain organ systems in the body. And then we look at like the spirit of the tongue. Like, is it like flaccid and flabby, or does it have like life to it? What color is it? What color is there moss or fur growing on the top of the tongue, like a coating, which is a good thing? Is it thick? Is it thin? What color is it? What part of the tongue is it on? There's all kinds of stuff. And so we look at the tongue and it tells us what's going on inside the body.
Okay.
The pulse does the same thing. We take 3 pulses on the radial artery at the wrist at 3 different depths in 3 different locations on both sides. So what is that? 3, 6, 9, that's 18.
Right.
Yeah, and the pulse is hard to learn. So when I was in school, they said, don't even think you know anything about pulse taking for 10 years. And I found that to be accurate, that it wasn't until after 10 years that I started going, ooh, okay, and feeling much more confident in my pulse taking now. Unfortunately, a lot of people give up on the pulse. They just give up on it because it's too hard to learn. And that's unfortunate, because the pulse tells us everything that the tongue tells us, but the pulse changes rapidly, whereas the tongue changes slowly over time. So the tongue shows us how the course of treatment is affecting the body, but the pulse tells us what's going on now.
In this particular
in
treatment.
this minute, right? And that is really, really useful. So I would encourage anyone studying Chinese medicine,
Learn your pulse.
really, like, just stick with it, because it really becomes an amazing diagnostic tool. And it also is a way of developing trust with the patient. Like, if I take somebody's pulse and I go, "Did you eat breakfast today?" And they say, "Nah, no." And I go, "Yeah, busted right here. I can feel it in your spleen stomach pulse. You did not eat breakfast today." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." So eat breakfast before you come the next time. Or here's a banana.
And you said you can also, do you feel like you're coming down with something? You can tell in the
Oh,
pulse.
absolutely. Yeah, like I just had a patient the other day come in, and she said, "I feel like I'm coming down with something." And I took her pulse and I said, "No, you're not coming down with something.
Huh.
This is something different." And it did. It ended up being, what the heck was it? It ended up being like some kind of gastrointestinal problem.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I was like, "Yeah, no, you're not coming down with something."
Fascinating. Okay. All right. Let's go to in episode number 43. We started talking about something that I approached as seasonal, but you enlightened me that it's not, and that's allergies. So, but we have seasonal allergies, environmental allergies, food allergies. Just
Oh,
give
yeah.
us a little of your spin on the allergy situation.
Well, and also here in the Mojave Desert, this is like the land of allergies. I mean, it's like everyone is like, "Oh, I have seasonal allergies." It's so dusty here. It's so dry. Everybody's sinuses dry out, and there's massive pollen. I mean, a couple months ago, outside of my office, there were like snow drifts of pollen. So it's really common. So usually, like usually people think of allergies as having something to do with the lungs, right? Because that's where we feel the symptoms, and the nose and the sinuses are considered part of the lung system in Chinese medicine. So it's often some kind of lung problem, but not always, because there's another organ system, the spleen system. And one of the things that the spleen does, it has a lot to do with digestion, but it also identifies what is us and what is not us.
Huh.
And sometimes with allergies, that ends up being an issue,
Okay.
where the body takes something in that it doesn't recognize as foreign, and then there's a reaction. So in my experience anyway, I go to the lungs usually first, but if I don't find much going on in the lungs, then I go to the spleen and invariably find something. So ideally, like, I consider the treatment a success if we do a course of treatment and people get rid of their allergies. And then, like, over the years, I've had patients who were prone to like allergies in the springtime. So I would have them come in like once a year, and they would come in like in March, and I would give them a tune-up, and then they could go through their allergy season
Wow.
and be fine. Or people who tend to have their allergies in the fall, get them to the point where, come see me in August or September, just once, give you a tune-up so that you can get through your allergy season. So, yeah, I mean, it's really useful. And then there's some good formulas for that. I used to live on a horse farm, as you know, and there was an old stallion there named Ari, and Ari was actually on an herbal formula for his
Oh, wow.
allergies. Yeah, and it's sung artisan. It might be a good formula for you, actually. Yeah, and it worked out great for him, and he was a horse.
That's
But
funny.
yeah, so every year, like around springtime, his owner would get him.
Oh, okay. So just same as with the
Yeah,
person.
just
So-
like with a person. Yeah.
Okay. In episode number, what was it, 48, what I found to be one of the most interesting topics of the year, you told us about something called facial rejuvenation, which is
Oh.
kind of an acupuncture facelift, for lack of a better
Yeah,
term. So tell us about Virginia Duran and
Okay.
that whole thing there.
Yeah, so Virginia Duran is like a rock star in Chinese medicine. I think she's still practicing. She came to my school 20 some odd years ago. The Chinese had said, "Oh, of course you can do a facelift with acupuncture." And then they showed us, and we were like, "What are you talking about? This is nothing. This clearly does not work." And then she showed up, and she had developed this whole unique system of how to do a facelift that she called facial rejuvenation. And she taught us all this technique, which was fascinating and had immediate results, which was like, whoa. So it uses these tiny little needles, and her one of her foundational principles was that it's not that there's not enough collagen left. It's that it's migrated. And so you've got too much collagen here, and then where there's wrinkles, you don't have enough collagen. So she developed this technique to move the collagen around. It was really amazing. And so her treatment, and it was very detailed, was it took like 12 to 15 treatments because you'd get immediate results, but then they would fade. So then you do it again. And then they would fade a little slower. And then again, and again, and again, until finally you stretch out the time where it stays, until finally it stays for, 5, 6, 7 years.
Wow. I mean, that was amazing when we talked about
It's
that.
really amazing. And, and I've taught people how to do it in the hopes that one of them would actually do it for me, but has that ever happened? No.
No, not yet.
So,
But a remarkable process.
yeah,
So.
it's really amazing. Now, the other thing that she said was never do facial rejuvenation on someone who's had
Plastic surgery.
had
right,
plastic
right.
surgery. And I disavowed her once, and it was a big mistake.
So she was right.
Yeah. The channels are all messed up. The face, it's just not right. It just doesn't work.
Huh, interesting. Wow, fascinating. Okay, so there's a little bit of some examples of what we spent the past year, the 51 episodes prior to this one, discussing. And some of these things we will be bringing up again and going deeper into further. And some of them we just bring up there regularly. Yes, ma'am.
Also, for those of you that are watching this broadcast, please share and like it, or like and share it. But also, if you have an idea for a subject that we should address, that would be great to know.
Or an ailment that you haven't gotten answers for. Right. Great idea.
That would be great. And we could do a whole episode, especially if you've had something that you've been trying to fix or trying to work around and you haven't had a lot of success, but you're not quite ready to maybe take the plunge with Chinese medicine. Let us know and we'll do an episode.
Great idea. Okay, on that, you can leave those right in the comments below, or Susan's email has been coming across the screen every so often, so you may email her with those questions and whatnot, or ideas for shows as well, or to make an appointment. And as I said at the top of the broadcast, do something other than just give away your money when you're here in Vegas, except for the lucky few of you who go home happy. So anyways, that'll do it for our first year of the In Medicine and On Medicine podcast. If you'd have put money as to whether we'd be still being here doing this 52 weeks later, I don't know if you would have put money on it, but I think we are now in the groove and doing it, and we will see you next week to start year 2. So thank you for joining us. I'm Scott. As always, Leo is the black flat hair. Marty is the gray wired hair.
Brothers.
They are brothers from the same litter. This is the In Medicine and On Medicine podcast. Happy anniversary to us. It's been 1 year of this. We will start year 2 when we see you next time. Have a great day.